You have had this conversation before, not out loud, in your head late at night. You go over what happened, trying to figure out where things went wrong, wondering if you said the wrong thing, pushed too hard, expected too much. You replay the betrayal, the disrespect, the coldness, wondering if maybe, if you had just handled it differently, things would have gone another way. And in the middle of that exhaustion, you ask yourself the most painful question of all. Why do I keep staying? Why do I keep forgiving someone who consistently shows me they do not respect me? People will tell you it is because you are naive. They will say you love too much, that you are too forgiving, that you are simply blind to the toxicity standing right in front of you. But I am here to tell you that is a lie. You don't stay because you are blind to their flaws. You stay because your nervous system is addicted to their potential. Today, we are going to dismantle the illusion of why highly perceptive, deeply feeling people remain trapped in cycles of betrayal. We are going to explore the raw, biological realities of the human brain, the chemistry of the trauma bond, and the groundbreaking psychological discoveries of Carl Jung. We will uncover exactly what manipulative people know about you that you do not yet know about yourself. By the end of this video, you will stop blaming yourself. You will understand the invisible chains keeping you tethered to a doomed relationship, and you will learn exactly how to break them. Chapter 1. The supercomputer mind and the myth of blindness. Let us start by destroying the biggest misconception about empaths and sensitive people. When you talk about staying with someone who hurts you, the world assumes you are blind to their behavior. They assume your compassion dulls your perception. That is exactly backwards. The same qualities that make you generous and understanding also make you extraordinarily accurate at reading people. Empathy is not just a personality type or a spiritual gift. It is a neurological function. Every human brain contains mirror neurons, which allow us to feel what others feel, but your system is highly tuned. You see the inconsistencies. You notice the gap between what they say and what their body language communicates. You pick up on the subtle feeling that they are performing a version of themselves rather than actually being present. Most empaths see exactly what is happening. They know something is wrong in a way that goes beyond what they can rationally explain. So, if you see the red flags, if your internal alarm system is screaming at you, why do you stay? Because you don't just feel other people's pain, you understand it. You can see with remarkable clarity where someone's behavior comes from. You see the fear underneath their anger, the wound underneath their cruelty, the terrified child underneath the adult who learned to protect themselves by hurting others first. That understanding is not a delusion. It is often genuinely accurate, but it creates a belief that becomes a trap. You tell yourself, if I can just understand why they are the way they are, if I can see the wound underneath the behavior, then maybe with enough patience, enough love, enough consistency, I can be the person who finally helps them heal. This is not naivety, it is hope. But it is a very particular kind of hope, the kind that requires your continued presence to survive, the kind that makes leaving feel like abandonment. Chapter 2. The chemistry of the trauma bond. Understanding why someone hurts you does not protect you from the biological damage of being hurt. You cannot reason your way out of a trauma bond because the bond does not live in your logical mind. It lives in your body. There is a chemical process that happens inside people in cycles of mistreatment followed by warmth, and it operates below the level of conscious thought. Here is how it works. When someone treats you poorly, criticizes you, withdraws from you, or creates instability, your body responds with stress. Cortisol rises. The nervous system goes on alert. You are plunged into a low-grade state of anxiety, feeling like you are always one wrong move away from losing them. And then they come back. They are warm again, affectionate. The charming, attentive version of them you fell in love with reappears. In that exact moment, your nervous system floods with relief. Dopamine is released. The contrast between the agonizing anxiety and the sudden relief is so sharp, so intensely physical, that the warmth feels more intense than it ever would have if there hadn't been tension before it. This is the psychological mechanism of intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes slot machines impossible to walk away from. The unpredictability of the reward creates an addiction. Your brain starts to associate this person, the very source of your pain, with relief itself. Once your brain makes this association, it will do almost anything to return to that state of relief. It will minimize the betrayal. It will rationalize the cruelty. It will tell you that the good times are who they really are, and the bad times are just an exception. You are not staying because you are weak. You are staying because your neurological system has been hijacked by a survival mechanism designed for connection, turned against you in a cycle you didn't choose. Chapter 3. Projection and the fantasy of potential. Beyond the biology, there is a profound psychological illusion keeping you anchored to this person. Carl Jung spent his life mapping the unconscious, and he identified one of the most powerful forces keeping people trapped in painful, repetitive dynamics: projection. When you stay with someone who repeatedly betrays you, you are not actually relating to the human being standing in front of you. You are relating to the fantasy of who they could become. You see the version of them that has done the healing work, the version that has confronted their patterns, the version that finally shows up the way you need them to. You relate to their potential, but relating to potential is projection. You are seeing something you have placed onto them, a story you need to be true. Why do you need it to be true? Because the alternative, accepting who they actually are right now, would require you to make decisions you are not ready to make. It would require you to face the devastating reality of your own wasted effort. You need them to become who they could be, because losing the hope of that would feel like losing everything. Jung was emphatic about this. Understanding someone's pain does not make them safe to be around. Shadow detection, your ability to perceive the unhealed wounds hiding beneath someone's toxic behavior, is a protection mechanism, not a rescue mandate. When you treat a red flag as a cry for help, you sign a contract for your own destruction. You barter your psychological safety for the illusion that if you just love them hard enough, you can fix them. You cannot. No human being has the obligation, nor the capacity to heal another person's internal split. Chapter 4. The fawn response and sunk costs. If you want to understand why you are still there, we have to look at how you handle conflict. Most people know about fight or flight, but fewer people know about the fawn response. Fawning happens when you learn, usually early in life, that the safest way to manage conflict is to make the other person feel okay. Not to address the conflict, not to hold your ground, but to soothe, to smooth things over, to find the exact thing that will bring the temperature down and restore the peace. For an empath, fawning feels like kindness. It feels like the mature, generous thing to do. But underneath it, you are learning a devastating lesson, that your own discomfort, your own pain and your own needs are less important than maintaining the other person's equilibrium. Every time they betray you, you twist yourself into knots, trying to understand their perspective. You apologize for your reactions. You train the relationship to function in a way where your well-being is never the priority, and then you encounter the sunk cost fallacy. You have poured months, maybe years, into this person, but what you have invested isn't just time. It is emotional labor. It is the deep, exhausting, invisible work of trying to understand, hold, support, and navigate around someone else's complexity. There is no record of this work. No one else can see it, but you feel it. And walking away from it feels like accepting that all of that agonizing effort meant absolutely nothing. So you stay a little longer. You wait for the apology. You wait for the moment they finally look at you and say, "I know what I put you through, and I am sorry." That moment almost never comes. Apologies without changed behavior are just better articulated lies, and the waiting keeps you tethered to someone who has already moved on. Chapter 5. The blueprint of the wound. This brings us to the hardest part of the truth. Why were you available for this dynamic in the first place? This is not about blaming yourself. The person who mistreated you is entirely responsible for their own behavior. But taking responsibility for your own unconscious patterns is the only way to reclaim your power. Your childhood left a blueprint inside of you, and that blueprint has been quietly running your adult relationships ever since. When you are a child, your nervous system is recording everything. It encodes what love feels like, what closeness means, and what you have to do to be accepted. If you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where a parent was emotionally unpredictable, or where you had to earn approval by managing everyone else's emotions, your nervous system recorded that as normal. You internalized a deep, unconscious belief that love is something you earn through effort, through attentiveness, through never being too much trouble. As an adult, Your nervous system keeps searching for what it knows. Psychologists call this repetition compulsion. Your unconscious mind is always trying to return to what is familiar, hoping this time to finally get it right. When you met this person, their emotional unavailability felt recognizable, like a problem you already knew how to try to solve. The familiar chaos felt like home. You weren't drawn to them because you wanted pain. You were drawn to them because two wounds recognized each other. You built a mask, a provisional persona, that said, "I am the dependable one. I am the one who always helps. I do not need much." And the predator saw that mask. They saw someone whose attentiveness and tolerance would allow their toxic surface to stay intact. Someone who would keep trying, keep giving, keep finding reasons not to leave. Chapter 6. The Hollow Moment and the Awakening. But human endurance has a limit. You cannot bleed forever. There comes a moment when the empath finally leaves. But they do not leave in explosive anger, and they do not leave out of sheer exhaustion. They reach what Jungian psychology might call the hollow moment. It happens quietly. You are sitting across from the person you have been pouring your soul into, and suddenly, at a level deeper than thought, you feel the absence of the person you thought you loved. You realize you are looking at a stage set that looks like a house, but has nothing behind the walls. In that moment of quiet clarity, the illusion shatters. You understand that the love you have been working so hard to earn was never actually available. You recognize that you have been bartering your vital life force for a fiction. And then you experience grief. Not just grief for the relationship, but grief for the person who never existed, the idealized version you fell in love with. Grieving a fiction is profoundly disorienting because you are mourning an absence that was always there. But this grief is what ultimately sets you free, because you cannot miss someone who was never real. Once the hope has been grieved, the hope that they would change, that the early version was the true version, the narcissist has nothing left to work with. The trauma bond breaks. Conclusion: the sovereign empath, when a deeply perceptive empath truly walks away, they do it in a way a manipulator cannot follow. You leave without needing a confession. You no longer need them to validate your experience because you have finally validated it yourself. The closure becomes internal. You don't hate them. You detach from them. Hatred is still a bond. It requires energy and an ongoing narrative. But genuine neutrality, the state where the other person simply no longer holds power in your nervous system, is impossible for a manipulator to combat. Most importantly, you don't just leave the person. You leave the wound. You identify the patterns that made you accessible to this dynamic, the fawn response, the need to rescue, the belief that love must be earned. You rewrite those patterns, your sensitivity, your deep empathy, your capacity to understand the dark and broken parts of other human beings. These were never your enemies. The problem was that you directed them entirely outward, leaving yourself completely unprotected. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to include yourself in the circle of people you care for. Stop waiting for potential that doesn't exist. Stop performing endless emotional labor for people who consume it without gratitude. You do not have to earn your place in this world by fixing everyone else. The next time your supercomputer mind processes the red flags and your gut tightens, do not reach for your toolkit to fix them. Do not close your eyes and hope the cliff disappears. Reach for the door. Now, go reclaim your life.